Thank you for joining us. I am here with George Buchan. George is a wonderful man, and I think you'll really enjoy hearing from him. Give me your name and where you were born.
George Buchan, Waterloo, Iowa, 1951.
Waterloo, Iowa. So, what do you remember about your parents and Waterloo?
Well, my parents were active in church and other organizations. Mm-hmm. They liked to have people to our house to entertain. They liked to eat and cook. They were good storytellers. One of the things I really liked about get-togethers is just sitting in the corner and hitting same stories over and over the years.
Yeah.
Mom went to work as soon as I started school, first grade. Mm-hmm. And Dad had several jobs during my lifetime. Been into the hospital, had a very severe car accident. Mm-hmm. It was return difficulties from then on with different things.
Yeah.
We were in Iowa till I was 6 years old. We lived in like 4 or 5 houses in Iowa.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then we lived in the same house in Minnesota, Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, northwest suburb of Minneapolis, from first grade until after I was married. So my folks were there. Yeah.
So you moved around a lot very early, and then stayed for a while.
Yeah.
In Minnesota. Okay. All right. Good. What was your favorite thing as a child, and what was your least favorite thing, or memories?
I think my favorite things were solitary, imaginary things. Building models, playing with my train down in the basement, especially in the winter when the furnace was running and it was nice and warm. Just that. Yeah. It was just a peaceful, imaginary world.
Yeah.
And then acting out things in my bedroom, like fighting the Battle of the Alamo, and I'd be Davy Crockett. The bed was the wall that I would be defending.
Yes. And did you win?
No,
it still didn't win.
But I was very brave.
But as long as you were brave, that's the main thing. What about your least favorite things or memories?
Meeting people or having to be out in large groups with strangers or unfamiliar people. And two kind of illustrations of how shy I was. All this was very young. Was my parents and grandparents and aunt and uncle were at my grandma's house, and they had Santa Claus, a guy they hired to be Santa Claus, come at Christmas. And when he came in the room, I dove under a chair, and I wouldn't come out until he left. Everybody was around the chair trying to get me out, and I wouldn't come out. And my earliest memory of Sunday school is waiting under a table by the door for my parents to come.
Just sitting under the table waiting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Well, all right. I think you probably overcome some of that, at least. Well, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up, and did you end up doing anything in that area?
Yeah, it wasn't intentional or planned, but I was always interested in all kinds of machines, and I think I wanted to operate a big machine of some kind. I liked dump trucks and tractor trailers and earth movers and farm tractors and race cars.
Yeah.
That came along not too long in life. I wanted to build and race a car. So I did end up driving tractor trailer for 21 years.
Okay.
And that was not planned, but that's the way the journey went. Mm-hmm. And I did. This was probably a little bit more planned, but I did end up building and driving 3 cars. I was building them just so they would run.
Yeah.
But I did race them a little bit too.
Raced them a little bit. Yeah. What kind of racing did you do?
It was autocross and rallies and and some drag racing.
Some drag racing.
Yeah, recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
How recent was the drag racing?
Just the last 5 years.
Last 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was interested in sports cars. That's how I come into autocross and rally. I was
Right.
in the Sports Car Club of America.
Oh yeah.
And I actually looked down on drag racing because you just went in a straight line and
Yeah.
what's that? But
Yep.
it was more accessible in my old age and not dangerous.
Gotcha. Yes. Well, at least probably
At least at
speeds
my
at
level.
speeds that you're
Yeah.
working with. Yeah, that's true. Very good. Well, what in the time that you've lived, what time has been your favorite? What age or period of time has been your favorite, and why?
Well, all the years of my boys growing up and just playing with them, just imaginary, reading stories, singing to them at night.
Yeah.
Especially the years on the farm. We had lived on this old farm for 14 years, and just being in the woods or camping at a couple of state parks, fishing. We had a lake just like a couple miles from our house.
Yeah. Well, you were
And
in
working
Minnesota at the time.
Yeah, Minnesota.
So
Yeah.
I think there's a lake a couple miles from your house,
Yeah.
wherever you are in Minnesota. Yeah. Well, good. Did you do any farm work on the farm? Did you work the farm, or did you?
No.
Okay.
We did a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
I don't know if the boys enjoyed some of that so
Right.
much, but
I'm sure it was good for them. Yeah.
and then I another favorite time of mine was the last 2 years of college,
Okay.
where I got involved with a Christian organization called InterVarsity, and really started studying the Bible, and I think having more open, real friendships with Christians. Up until that time, my only friends were non-Christians.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't participate much in church
Okay.
until the last 2 years of college. And that's where I met Karen, which was a great thing.
So also good years in that.
And I came out of that with a commitment to the local church, and being that's what you do, and that's how you minister, is through the church, and that's how you grow and strengthen.
Good. That's very good. We're glad you did, for sure. Yeah, very much so. Tell me, what are some of the traits, especially as you think about Karen, what are some of the traits that you value in others?
Loyalty and dependability and patience.
And then would you say that your wife encompasses all those things as well?
Yeah.
I'd expect so. Along with some of those traits, who would you say has had the most positive influence in your life? Who's been your role model?
Well, with that, when I read that question, the first thing I thought of was Hebrews. Since we are therefore surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, and early on in learning the Bible, when I came across that, it immediately I identified with it, that I was, and the people who were that cloud of witnesses for me. I mean, being a witness, being a person who testifies to the truth.
Yeah.
And that would be, my parents, my dad's friends, a long list of pastors, the InterVarsity staff worker, my sister, some of her friends, and how they lived and talked and made Jesus and their faith so real. And then with the pastors, how they interacted with me and encouraged and helped me to grow in specifically some specific situations.
Yeah.
Over, from high school on through into marriage.
Yeah. That's good. So a cloud of witnesses as
Yeah.
opposed to just.
And, but
anyone.
well, there was also but there was two men that I wanted to be like, and I didn't really come to this conclusion until in my 20s.
Mhm.
And this related to Pastor Terry and something he had said in Minneapolis at a church we were going to.
Mhm.
He had a class for new dads.
Ah.
He was the Christian ed pastor.
Okay. Yeah.
And a few years later, something happened, and then I thought, who do I really want to be like? I would be like Grandpa and Uncle Leonard. And of course, Grandpa was always my hero.
Yeah.
From a little boy.
Yeah.
He helped me learn how to ride a bicycle, and he was a big machine. He drove a railroad engine. He was an engineer.
Yes. So the big machines, yeah. He
And
had to work with
Uncle
the
Leonard,
large
he
ones,
was a machine operator in a factory. Neither one of them had a high school education,
No.
but they were who I looked up to.
That's good. What would you say has been your greatest blessing in life, and why is that?
That would be knowing Jesus. Because everything springs out of that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Everything that's in my life now is a result of knowing Him. I don't know how you can separate Jesus from anything. Without Him, there's no life. Yeah. And I think that knowing Him, and I think He's responsible for my wife, being my wife. As far as I don't, it can't be any other way.
Yeah.
And Karen, gave birth to 4 sons and built up their character. They are, to me, 4 boys of uncommon character. Yeah. And she created the home life. I was working 60 hours a week, sometimes 65 hours a week, and she is the one who discovered homeschooling. And well, there's a whole bunch of stories I could tell about that. And she just has been those character traits through, especially in ministry and encouragement, and in failure.
Yeah. Steady and strong, and yeah, that's great. That's excellent. Yeah. If you could have one do-over in life, what would that be?
Well, when I thought about that, there is something came to mind. This one that popped into my mind. It's not too important or anything, but my view on that is another biblical view on that is that all things work together for good for those who are in Christ Jesus. Yeah. And then in Philippians, I think it is, forgetting what lies behind and striving onward for the call in Christ, upward call in Christ.
Yeah.
So that there's not much point in thinking about do-overs.
Right.
And that's how I try to approach. I'm sure the one that popped into my mind, which does not mean anything to anybody, was the truck driving experience.
Yeah.
And I explained it to the boys, and they said, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
But the winter drove tractor trailer, big trailer, loaded, and it was a winter. Went into this town of Jamestown, North Dakota, which is down a hill.
Okay. Yeah.
And there was a blizzard going on, and they shut the roads down, so I had to stay overnight. But I was supposed to go to Bismarck. So as soon as it got light out, the snow stopped. Well, the road going in and out of town was about a 15% grade, about a half mile.
Oh.
And I took off up that hill and I did not make it. And I ended up sliding backwards down the hill into the ditch.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And so I should have, well, I mean, I was late. I was already 8 hours late. And I knew they were waiting for the bread.
Mm-hmm.
But if I would have waited another hour, the sanding trucks would have come by and I could have got up the hill.
Yeah.
But,
Well.
but I don't have any major life decisions that I think they all worked somehow to end up where I am now.
Yeah. That's good. That's a very good perspective on it.
Even though there were some decisions, things I went through that were not pleasant.
Sure. Absolutely. But
and neither was that sliding down the hill.
Well,
yeah. Even thinking about it makes me feel kind of.
But you probably learned from it and were
yeah.
able to do better. So, well, bringing it back to more, I guess, spiritual things as well. When did you know for sure that you were going to heaven, and where was that? How did it happen? Do you know? Can you recall a specific instance?
I can recall a specific instance, but that question I find to be a long answer.
Yeah.
Difficult. I mean, there was a point where I made a decision at around age 10.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But the question is certain, right? Or something?
When did you know for sure you were going to heaven? Right.
There were doubts, or there were questions over the next few years where being at like evangelistic meetings or mission conferences, and there'd be like this pressure to make this lifetime commitment, and I just know over several years through high school, wondering if, maybe I make another decision, or maybe there's something more. Maybe I haven't quite done it the right way or something.
Right. Yep.
And but I became quite certain of it. You know, because I would quiz myself. Okay, so what do I believe? Well, I believe this, this, and this. Well, that's what you're supposed to believe. Well, I should be okay, but am I?
Yeah.
And but as late as late 20s, so I was like about 28, I was commuting to school with another Christian, and we were discussing our growth in the Christian life. And he had this question, well, when do you think you were really saved? And I went back and I thought, because there were some points of change of growth, but as I reviewed, I thought, no, those points of change came because when I made that decision at around age 10, God was in me, and he was working, and he wouldn't let me get away from that cloud of witnesses. And he was just building me up to where I was at the point when that guy asked me that question. And I came to the conclusion it really was when I was 10. That's when, although I wasn't sure, it was certain.
It was certain, yeah. He was sure. God was
sure.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Very good. Appreciate that. So other than the Bible, we'll get to that a little more later, but other than the Bible, what book or two have influenced your thinking the most, and why?
Okay. Well, so I tried to be spontaneous on this question, and it was 3 of them popped into my mind, and then I went looking for them, because we've had a lot of books, and we don't have any of these anymore at home.
Yeah.
And I was sure one was there, and it was there a few years ago, but it's not there now.
No.
But the 3 were Knowing God by J.I. Packer, which I read senior year of college, or right after I graduated. And another one was Hind's Feet on High Places, a very well-known book, I think, by Han. And then another one was Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire by Jim Simpala or something.
Okay. Yeah.
And the first, I don't remember the content
Yeah.
of knowing God, except it must have been about getting to know God better. I'm assuming.
Hopefully,
But
yeah.
anyway, after I read that book, it was right after college, and I decided to go back. Because of reading that,
Mhm.
I went back to the company that I had worked at through my college years that paid for college,
Mhm.
and stayed there for 3 years.
Okay.
And that was a result of reading that book. But I don't remember.
Don't remember.
I only read it once. But I
Yeah.
knew it really moved me.
Yeah.
And Hind's Feet on High Places was an allegory. I don't remember it real clearly, but it was a person. I don't know if there was a guide or if they were getting a map or something, but it's journeying from one place to another, and the trail they have to take, and keep coming up with this question. This seems a little bit hard. Is this the right way?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we try something else?
Yeah.
And of course, the lesson, there is just because things are hard doesn't mean you're headed down the wrong road.
Right.
And then the Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire, I believe he was a pastor. He was a pastor, and his father had been a pastor, and I think it might have been the Brooklyn Tabernacle. But that might have been another book. Sometimes you remember things.
Right. Yeah.
But
it kind of makes up. Yep.
But and I did write something from this book in my journal that I started keeping in the 90s. And but the lesson from that book was, well, he was trying to be like his dad, and trying to be what he thought a pastor should be, and was just miserable. And but I thought the lesson from that book was that, and the encouragement was that God made you who he wanted to use. And for me, that was my personality and my conflict with looking at other people and thinking, if I could be like them, then I could do things pretty good. And this was saying, God's got you where he wants you, and you don't need to be somebody else.
That is very good, very important. Speaking of books, what is your favorite book in the Bible, and why?
Okay. The four Gospels, because I'm going to have to give you 3 answers.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because that's where I first started. And that's where you get to know Jesus. And when you know Jesus, you know God. And that's where you find out that Jesus is a person and has a personality and is really real. But then the next one I would say would be Isaiah. And what I like about Isaiah is, what I found, what really struck me, is God talking in the first person, or with, Isaiah writes it. He writes it as God speaking in the first person, a lot of it.
Right.
And he tells you who he is. He's talking to his people, to Israel, but he makes these you see a lot of emotion from God in there, and I think frustration, disappointment, excitement, and one of the statement he repeats a lot is, I am God and there is no other. It's like, hey, wake up.
Yeah.
I'm the only one.
Yeah.
You better, if you miss me, you've missed it.
Right. Yeah.
And he just makes all kinds of statements. God makes all kinds of statements about himself. Which I just find it a very powerful book. But then it's got 3 little quiet words that struck me just a few years ago. He's speaking, talking to the people about Jacob and your descendants of Abraham. In these 3 words, he says, Abraham, my friend. And that I go every now and then, I just flip that open and just stare at it. Because this guy who makes all these proclamations about who he is and what he's done and what he can do and how much he loves you. And then he says of this man, he says to these other people, Abraham, my friend. It's just amazing to me.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely agree. I've often been struck by that for sure. Yeah.
And then in the New Testament, Jesus repeats this thing when he's meeting with his disciples.
Yeah.
And they're talking about who's considered his right hand, I think, and he tells them, he kind of says, listen, you guys are my servants. The servant doesn't eat at the table with the master. And then a little while later, I think it's right before the Last Supper, he meets with them and he says, I no longer call you servants, I call you friends.
Yeah. That's good. Very good. All right. Can compose and then ask, as you've gotten older, what are your thoughts on the local church? Where can local churches improve? What are they doing well?
Okay, here's another, where the words, the language, it catches it. Because if you're saying, well, what do I think of the local church? I feel like I'm observing from the outside, and the church belongs to somebody's responsible for the church. It's over there.
This is what they need.
So I rephrase it. What do I think the body of Christ is doing? You are a part of the body. I'm a part of the body, and we are the church. And a little history goes into this. I've been a part of 9. I think I counted back about 9 churches in my life. And they've all been good, the ones I think, good teaching and caring about the lost, caring about needy, caring about foreign missions, cross-cultural missions, about family. Is this the one that says, as I've grown older?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And wiser, yes.
It seems consistent.
Yeah.
I feel, over my life and the churches I've been involved in, it seems very consistent.
Yeah.
What could we do better?
Yeah. What are they doing well? But also, where could they improve? At least from your experiences.
Well, recently I've been thinking that discipleship it's something that's, is a purpose, but I feel like it's not well defined. What is a disciple and how do you make one?
Yeah. Yeah. What would do you have an answer for that, or is that something you're just exploring? Yeah.
I might ask myself the question, am I a disciple?
Right.
Have I discipled anybody?
Right. Yeah. What about the world in general? What's the biggest difference that you see in the world today from when you were, say, in your 20s or just younger?
Okay. Well, that's 1971 to 1981. It's my 20s. And the world was quite a mess then. There was black and white conflict. There was just got done wrapping up 12 years war in Vietnam, assimilating Vietnamese refugees, oil embargo, which had gas stations closed on weekends, a nationwide 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. Our Christmas break and senior year of college was extended by a month, so they didn't have to use fuel heating the dormitories.
Yeah.
Iran changed. We had a revolution in Iran, and there was hostages. There was, but on college campus, it was also, I thought, a real interest in Christianity.
Yeah.
From the late 70s.
Yeah.
And a 14% interest rate at the end of that period. If you want to buy a house, it costs you big bucks.
Yeah. Yes.
And so how does that change from now? In my perspective, it doesn't seem that different, except where, I don't know, I don't think there's as much interest in Christianity as there was then. There was also a lot of, and then the other thing was the cultural change, which seemed to be in college. I mean, seemed like people my age, there was a drastic turn towards alcohol and drugs and change of moral values.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I think perhaps that's gotten worse. But internationally, the trouble of the world just goes on. So I think maybe I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I knew there was a lot of trouble then in the dormitories, and
so you were aware of it either way, and still aware of it now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I played basketball with veterans coming back from Vietnam, and that was a kind of an odd mix. Guys right out of high school and guys right out of combat playing basketball together.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So some differences maybe, but probably not as different as we might think.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite thing about the world and the way it is even today?
Well, probably my little tiny world.
Yeah. your slice of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and then that 20s, I was also this going back. That was a decade of continual change for me.
Yeah.
It went from college to marriage to children to Chicago to Fargo.
Yeah.
And now my life has been stable for 17 years.
Yeah.
Stable. So I'm living in my little world is prosperity and peace and freedom and pretty quiet. I mean, I know there's stuff going on out there, but
right.
I know people that are having hard times.
Yeah.
But life is good for me. It really is. Best.
Yeah.
I mean, it's financially. I mean, in the 10 years past those 10 years, I mean, we were like, picking our pockets and got another penny in there.
Yeah. Yep. Well, what do you see, in so much as you are aware of it, what do you see as the biggest issue in the world today?
I would say that just the same, the separation from Jesus Christ and the never-ending history. I was a history minor in college, so I mean, all of history is power and greed and who can control what, and it just continues on.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. What would you say is the biggest difference in the way that you see the church today as opposed to when you were in your 20s? The way you see it.
Okay, the way I would see it is that I see less of it now. Because we were part of denomination. Mm-hmm. And as being a part of denomination, I think that you were more aware of, well, at least the church at large is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And also the vocabulary is different.
Yeah.
Back then the discussion was evangelicals, fundamentalists, and charismatic. And the words lordship, salvation, and free grace didn't even exist, as far as I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the free grace is relatively new debate or discussion,
Right.
like within the last 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I was not aware of free grace things until fairly recently myself. So, yeah, if I wasn't aware of it.
And then the voices of Christianity back in my earlier years, even not too long ago, but it would be like Chuck Swindoll, Ravi Zacharias, James Dobson, and now I don't have that. I don't have a popular voice that is common to me.
Yeah.
And then some of the printed information was like the National Association of Evangelicals. Maybe stuff comes out of there, but I don't hear it. My communication is more separate. If it's there, and Christianity Today, that would be on the news. Christianity Today says this.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if that ever happens. And then we had our denominational magazine, Evangelical Beacon.
Oh, yeah.
And we had missionaries that that stayed in our home, that we knew more than we know now, and we kind of lost touch with some of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would say I was more aware of the larger church than I am now.
Yeah. Interesting.
I just through our missions newsletters and things that we get from missionary, currently about what's going on in the world. But the United States, I just hear these reports that it's declining, and I believe it.
Right.
But I don't know.
As far as having a pulse, hand on finger on the pulse. Would you say you prefer it that way, or there's good or bad, or it's just different?
Just different. Yeah. I mean, I'm quite happy with. There's enough to be involved in.
Yeah. There's enough here.
and we have the missions, and we pray for the Burdettes, and we get that information about the missions we support, and we still do have some touch with ones we've known in the past.
Okay, good. Yeah, very good. Well, what would you say, even knowing less about the church at large, what is your favorite thing about the church as it is today?
Yeah, it's come up with a simple answer for that.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's still here and I'm still part of it.
Yes. Me too. That's a good answer, a good simple answer. What do you see as the biggest issue either in or for the church today?
Well, especially in this virus COVID-19 thing, is getting the body back together, maintaining fellowship, preventing people from being alone, separated from the body, finding a way to get ministry to children back.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Well, speaking of children, if you could finish this statement, what would it be? Say, my message to the younger generation is?
It would be, get into the Gospels. Stay in the Gospels. Refresh yourself on the Gospels. Get to know Jesus. When you read the Gospels. I kind of talk to my grandkids this way. Read it like a novel or a story. Imagine while you're reading it. Meet Jesus. Be in the scene, because it's commentary. I mean, Jesus is talking to people. So be in the situation where Jesus is talking to somebody, the disciples or other people he meets, and be standing there next to him and see what expression he has on his face, what tone he has in his voice, and notice how he reaches out and touches people. And I think that's how you learn to love the Lord, and that's where you meet who God is. Because you meet God through, that's why one reason Jesus came, is to show us who God was. And that's what kind of brings life to Isaiah.
Yeah.
And want to be like him. Want to be like the man of Galilee. And then, now I'm talking that I'm assuming they're believers. But I think that's the best place to be influenced, to be a believer, is to know Jesus. Yeah. And really listen to what he says. And the other thing would be to know that as a believer, the church is essential to you, to your well-being, to your growth. And whether you feel a part of it or not, you are a part of it. When you believe, God is in you. And that makes you part of the body of Christ. And that's what the church is. It is the body of Christ. And he tells you, you are a part of it. So don't withdraw. Because you're going to miss something, and somebody else is going to miss something if you're not there. Because God is in you. And when you're not there, that body is not complete. And I would say read 1 Corinthians chapter 12.
1 Corinthians 12.
About the parts of the body. Yeah. And no part can say, I have no need of you. You need the body, and the body needs you.
It's very good. Very good. Very important. Important to remember. Keep in mind. George, I appreciate it. I appreciate.
I told you this a few weeks ago. I think this is a very good exercise for us seniors.
For seniors. I hope it is, and I know it's a blessing to me. Even in just a couple that I've done, it's been just such a blessing to be able to gather that. But it always is. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I was going to put another book in there, but I missed it. 1 John is a big one to me.
1 John, yeah.
Especially chapters 3 and 4. And that goes along with being part of the body. Where there's instruction there, and how we really are who he says we are. We really are his children. When we believe.
Yeah.